Let me tell you something right now. You are not here by mistake. You did not just happen to cross paths with that person, that situation, that storm by accident. You were placed there, positioned there, assigned there for a reason. I know it didn't feel like divine placement at the time. It felt unfair, like a cruel joke, like life was testing you in ways you never signed up for. But listen to me. Nothing happens without purpose. Nothing. You were placed in their life because there was something you needed to see, something you needed to learn, something you needed to become. And the only way you were going to get there was by walking through that fire. You see, life doesn't always send blessings wrapped in pretty packages. Sometimes the biggest gifts come disguised as pain, as betrayal, as heartbreak. Sometimes the most important lessons don't come from comfort, they come from chaos. And I get it, I do. You gave, you sacrificed, you bent over backwards, trying to love, trying to fix, trying to help, only to be met with resistance, manipulation, maybe even destruction. You wondered, why me? What did I do to deserve this? But the real question you need to ask yourself is, what was this meant to teach me? Because trust me, there was a lesson in that storm. And once you recognize it, once you embrace it, once you absorb it deep into your soul, you'll realize that none of it was wasted. Not one tear, not one sleepless night, not one moment of confusion was in vain. Sometimes you are placed in someone's life not to receive love, but to reveal truth. Sometimes your presence alone shakes the foundation of someone who is not ready to face themselves. And because of that, they try to break you instead. They project their fears, their insecurities, their darkness onto you because they can't handle their own reflection. And let me tell you something, when you shine bright in the life of someone who is used to operating in the shadows, don't be surprised when they try to dim your light. But don't you ever forget, your light was never for them to control. They didn't give it to you, and they can't take it away. What they did, what they said, how they treated you, it does not define you. It does not dictate your worth. It does not rewrite the truth of who you are. Because who you are, that was decided long before they ever entered your life. And your purpose, that's bigger than their opinion. You were placed in their life to elevate, to awaken, to show what real strength looks like. And maybe, just maybe, you weren't meant to stay. Maybe you weren't meant to fix them. Maybe your purpose was simply to shine so bright that they had no choice but to see the truth, for better or for worse. Because let's be real, not everybody is ready for the truth. Not everybody is willing to grow. Some people would rather stay in their comfortable toxicity than step into healing. And that's not your fault. That's not your burden to carry. You weren't sent to save them. You were sent to learn. And maybe the biggest lesson of all was realizing your own worth. Maybe you had to go through that storm to understand just how strong you really are. Maybe you had to feel broken so you could finally rebuild yourself. Not for them, not for anyone else, but for you. Because let me tell you something, you don't belong in places that diminish you. You don't belong in spaces that suffocate your soul. And sometimes life puts you in those situations just so you can finally wake up and say, I deserve better. You do. You deserve better than manipulation. You deserve better than one-sided love. You deserve better than being someone's emotional punching bag. You deserve to be seen, to be valued, to be cherished. Not for what you can do for them, but simply for who you are. And if they couldn't see that, if they couldn't appreciate that, then that's their loss. But it's your lesson. And what you do with that lesson, that's up to you. You can sit in anger, sit in regret, sit in bitterness, or you can take what you've learned and rise higher than you ever have before. You can walk away knowing that you were the blessing, that your presence was the gift, that your love was something they may never experience again, and that is not your burden to bear. That is their consequence. Because let me tell you, when you remove yourself from a toxic space, when you reclaim your energy, when you step fully into your power, there is nothing that can stop you. And the best part, the very same person who tried to break you will one day realize what they lost. Oh, they may never say it, they may never admit it, but deep down they will know. Because people don't forget the ones who showed them real love. People don't forget the ones who stood by them when they didn't deserve it. And people don't forget the ones who walked away not in anger, not in hate, but in wisdom. And that's what you're walking in now. Wisdom, strength, clarity, power. The kind of power that only comes when you finally understand why you were placed in that situation. Not to be a victim, not to be used, not to be depleted, but to be sharpened, refined, and prepared for something greater. Because where you're headed next, that's where you were always meant to be. And everything you went through, that was just the training ground. So stand tall, stand firm, and never question again why you were placed in that situation. You were there for a reason, but you are not meant to stay. Let me tell you something. What you went through was not a punishment. It was not some cruel twist of fate designed to destroy you. It was preparation. Every tear, every sleepless night, every moment where you felt like you were losing yourself. It was all shaping you. It was molding you into someone stronger, wiser, more powerful than you ever thought you could be. I know it didn't feel like preparation when you were in it. It felt like breaking. It felt like betrayal. It felt like the kind of pain that seeps into your bones, the kind that makes you question who you are, what you deserve, and whether or not you'll ever be whole again. But listen to me. Pain has a purpose. And the reason it hurts so bad, the reason it cuts so deep, it's because you had to grow. And growth doesn't happen in comfort. Growth happens in discomfort. Growth happens in struggle. You see, life doesn't just hand out strength. Life doesn't just give you wisdom, give you resilience, give you the kind of unshakable power that nothing can take away. No, those things are earned. Those things are built in the fire. And if you never went through the fire, you wouldn't know just how strong you really are. It had to happen. Every disappointment, every heartbreak, every betrayal, it had to happen. Not to break you, but to build you. Not to punish you, but to prepare you. You see, there's a version of you that exists on the other side of this pain that you haven't even met yet. A version of you that is untouchable. A version of you that knows exactly who they are, exactly what they deserve, and will never again settle for less. But to get to that version of you, you had to go through this. Because let's be honest, if life never tested you, if people never showed you their true colors, if you were never pushed to your limits, would you have really seen yourself for who you are? Would you have recognized your own strength? Would you have realized your worth? Some of you are out here thinking you lost, thinking life dealt you a bad hand, thinking that person stole something from you. No, you didn't lose. They lost. They lost access to you. They lost the privilege of standing next to someone who loved with everything they had. They lost the blessing that was your presence, your support, your kindness, your energy. And you gained. You gained wisdom. You gained clarity. You gained the knowledge of exactly what you will and will not tolerate moving forward. You see, preparation doesn't feel good in the moment. It feels like rejection. It feels like abandonment. It feels like doors closing, like people walking away, like everything you wanted is slipping through your fingers. But what if I told you that was the plan all along? What if I told you that the very thing you thought was breaking you was actually setting you free? Because let's be real, some of you are holding on to things that were never meant for you. You were holding on to people who didn't see your value. You were holding on to relationships that drained you, friendships that betrayed you, environments that suffocated you. And if life hadn't stepped in, if the pain hadn't woken you up, you would have stayed. You would have settled. You would have kept giving pieces of yourself to people who were never meant to hold them. That pain, it wasn't there to break you. It was there to wake you up. It was there to shake you to your core so you could finally see clearly. So you could finally say, I deserve better, and actually believe it. Because let's be real, you had moments where you knew, moments where something in your spirit told you this wasn't right, but you ignored it. You made excuses. You thought if you just loved harder, if you just gave more, just sacrificed a little bit longer, maybe things would change. But pain has a way of making sure you listen. When life needs to get your attention, it doesn't whisper, it roars. It shakes the ground beneath you. It forces you to let go of what is killing you. And I know, it hurt. It hurt like hell. But what's worse, a temporary pain that wakes you up, or a lifetime of settling for less than you deserve. And let's talk about the other side of this. Because right now, you might still be in it. You might still be trying to make sense of it all, still replaying the conversation, still questioning the decisions, still trying to figure out what you could have done differently. But listen to me. There is nothing you could have done. Nothing. You gave what you were supposed to give. You loved the way you were supposed to love. You tried. And when you try, you don't lose. The real loss, that belongs to the people who didn't appreciate you, the people who took you for granted, the people who thought they could treat you any kind of way and you'd always be there, the people who didn't realize they were standing in the presence of someone irreplaceable. And one day you're going to wake up and realize that this pain, it was the best thing that ever happened to you. You're going to look back and see that this was the moment everything changed. This was the moment you stepped into your power. This was the moment you finally understood your worth. And when that day comes, you're not going to feel bitterness. You're not going to feel anger. You're going to feel gratitude, because you're going to see that life wasn't punishing you. It was positioning you for something greater, something bigger, something that actually matches the love, the loyalty, the energy you bring to the table. And when you get there, when you step into that new season, you're going to thank life for the very thing you thought was destroying you, because you'll realize it was never breaking you, it was building you. Listen to me, you were never the problem, you were the mirror. You walked into their life with light, with love, with honesty, and they didn't know what to do with it. They weren't ready for it. They weren't ready to see themselves the way your presence made them see themselves. Because that's what happens when a strong spirit walks into the life of someone who's been hiding from their own reflection. It exposes them. It forces them to confront the parts of themselves they've been running from. And when that happens, when someone isn't ready for the truth, they don't appreciate the one holding the mirror. They resent them. They try to break them. They try to make them feel small so they don't have to face the reality of their own shortcomings. But let me tell you something. Your presence was never the issue. Your love was never the issue. The issue was that they weren't ready to be accountable. They weren't ready to face their demons, to acknowledge their flaws, to do the work to grow. And instead of rising to your level, instead of stepping up and becoming better, they chose the easy route. They chose to project their pain onto you. They chose to manipulate, to belittle, to gaslight, to twist reality so they wouldn't have to take responsibility for their actions. Because that's what people do when they're not strong enough to face themselves. They try to destroy anything that reminds them of the truth. And that's exactly what you were. You were a walking, breathing reminder of everything they weren't willing to fix in themselves. You were the proof that real love exists, that loyalty exists, that honesty exists. And instead of being inspired by that, instead of appreciating that, they resented it because it meant they had no excuse. It meant they had to look in the mirror and admit that they weren't who they pretended to be. And some people would rather live in denial than do the work to change. So what did they do? They tried to make you question yourself. They tried to make you believe that you were the problem, that you were too much, that you were the one who needed to change. But let me ask you something. Why is it that the very things they criticized you for are the very things other people admire about you? Why is it that the same kindness, the same patience, the same heart that they made you feel bad for is the same thing other people find inspiring? Because the problem was never you. It was never your love, your light, your loyalty. The problem was that they weren't ready for it. And when someone isn't ready for something real, they sabotage it. They push it away. They treat it like it's disposable. Not because it isn't valuable, but because they don't know how to handle it. Because they've never had to. But let me tell you something. Just because they couldn't see your worth doesn't mean you aren't worthy. Just because they mistreated you doesn't mean you deserved it. Just because they failed to appreciate you doesn't mean you weren't a blessing in their life. Because you were. Whether they admit it or not, whether they ever say it out loud or not, you were the one thing in their life that was real. You were the one person who showed them what love without conditions looked like. And that's something they will never forget. Oh, they'll act like they don't care. They'll pretend like you never mattered, but trust me, they know. They know exactly what they lost. They know exactly who you were. They may never say it, they may never admit it, but deep down, when they lay awake at night, when the distractions fade, when the people they ran to don't feel the emptiness inside them, they'll remember. And they'll realize. Because here's the truth. People don't forget the ones who made them feel something real. They don't forget the ones who stood by them when they didn't deserve it. They don't forget the ones who loved them when they were unlovable. And one day, they will have to face that truth. But you don't have to wait for that day. You don't have to wait for an apology that may never come. You don't have to wait for them to realize what they lost. Because this isn't about them. This is about you. This is about reclaiming your power. This is about realizing that their inability to see your worth was never a reflection of your value. This is about understanding that you were never there to be their punching bag, their project, their emotional crutch. You were there to be a light. And just because they couldn't handle that light doesn't mean you dim it. You keep shining, you keep moving, you keep being exactly who you are, because the right people will recognize it, the right people will appreciate it. The right people will step up, not step away. So stop questioning yourself. Stop wondering what you could have done differently. Stop thinking you weren't enough, because the truth is you were more than enough. They just weren't enough for you. Let me tell you something. Your light is yours. It was never given to you by them, and it was never theirs to take away. You walked into their life shining, full of love, full of energy, full of something rare, something powerful. And maybe at first they acted like they admired it. Maybe they even made you feel like you were special, like they appreciated everything you brought to the table. But over time, something changed, didn't it? It wasn't admiration anymore. It was resentment. It wasn't appreciation. It was competition. Because they realized something that you didn't yet understand. They realized that your light was something they could never control, and that scared them. See, when a person has spent their life surviving off of manipulating others, when they've learned how to twist reality to make people doubt themselves, they don't know what to do when they meet someone who isn't easily broken, someone who loves deeply but still stands strong, someone who gives freely but can't be manipulated, someone who sees through the lies, who recognizes the games, who refuses to play along. And that's what you were. You were the proof that they weren't as powerful as they thought they were. You were the evidence that not everyone can be controlled. And when they couldn't control you, they did the only thing they knew how to do. They tried to make you question yourself. They made you feel like you were the problem, like your kindness was a weakness, like your empathy was foolishness, like your ability to love deeply was something to be ashamed of. But listen to me. You were never the problem. You were never too much. You were never weak for loving the way you did. You see, people like that, people who operate in deception, in manipulation, in insecurity, they don't know how to receive something real. They don't know how to exist in the presence of someone who isn't afraid to shine. And instead of rising to meet you at your level, instead of working on themselves to become worthy of your light, they tried to dim it. They wanted you to doubt yourself. Because if you doubted yourself, you wouldn't see your worth. If you questioned your value, you would shrink. If they could convince you that you were nothing without them, that you were lucky just to have them, they could keep you exactly where they wanted you, small, dependent, controlled. But here's the truth. They never had control over you. They only had control over the version of you that didn't know any better. They only had control over the you that didn't yet realize how powerful you are. But that version of you, that version is gone now. That version woke up. That version finally looked in the mirror and saw what was really there. A person who was never weak, only kind. A person who was never foolish, only trusting. A person who was never lacking, only surrounded by people who made them feel like they were. And now that you see yourself clearly, now that you understand the depth of your worth, there is nothing they can do to take your light, because your light was never theirs to touch. Your energy, your love, your presence, that is something rare, something divine, something that cannot be replicated, and that is why they tried so hard to break it. Because deep down, they knew they were never on your level. They knew that without their games, without their tactics, without their manipulation, They could never truly stand beside you as equals. That's why they made you feel like you were the one who needed to change. That's why they made you feel like your emotions were a problem. That's why they dismissed your feelings, ignored your needs, made you feel like you were asking for too much when all you ever wanted was the bare minimum. Honesty, respect, effort. But they couldn't even give you that, could they? Because giving you that would mean admitting that you deserved more. And admitting that would mean admitting that they were never capable of being what you needed. And now you're here, standing at a crossroads. You've survived the worst of it. You've made it through the storm. And now you have a choice. You can continue to let their words, their treatment, their rejection make you feel like you're not enough, or you can reclaim your power. You can remind yourself that their inability to appreciate you was never a reflection of your worth. You can finally stop carrying the weight of their brokenness as if it was your responsibility to fix, because it was never your job to save them. It was never your job to prove your worth. It was never your job to shrink yourself just to make them comfortable. Your job was to be exactly who you are, bold, loving, strong, and full of light. And if they couldn't handle that, if they couldn't rise to meet you, that's on them. That's their loss. But what you do now, how you move forward, that's on you. So hear me when I say this. You are done dimming yourself for people who refuse to see your value. You are done explaining your worth to people who are never meant to have access to you. You are done watering yourself down just to fit into places you were never meant to be. From this moment forward, you shine. You love. You live boldly, unapologetically, fiercely, because the right people, the ones who are meant to be in your life, the ones who see you for who you are and honor that, they won't need you to shrink. They won't need you to prove yourself. They will recognize your light, and instead of trying to steal it, they will protect it. Instead of trying to dim it, they will reflect it. And that is the kind of energy you deserve. That is the kind of love you are worthy of. And that is exactly what you will attract when you finally stop giving your light to people who never deserve to stand in its glow. Let me tell you something. Your peace is priceless. Your mind, your heart, your energy, those are sacred, and not everyone deserves access to them. But for too long, you let the wrong people sit at your table. You gave chances to people who didn't deserve them. You opened your heart to those who only knew how to take, how to drain, how to manipulate. And why? Because you have a good heart. Because you saw the best in them. Because you believed in their potential. But let's be real. Potential is not enough. Potential is a promise that never got fulfilled. Potential is what they could have been if they wanted to be better. But you can't build a relationship, a friendship, or a life on someone's potential. You need proof, you need action, you need consistency, and that's where they failed. They made you feel like you had to prove your worth, like you had to fight for their attention, for their validation, for their love. And you did, didn't you? You fought, you sacrificed, you poured everything you had into them, hoping they would finally see you, finally appreciate you, finally choose you the way you chose them. But they never did. Not fully, not completely, because people like that don't want love, they want control. They don't want to meet you at your level. They want to keep you beneath them so they never have to rise. And that's exactly why they played the games they did. That's why they gave you just enough to keep you hoping, just enough to keep you waiting, but never enough to actually make you feel secure. Because the moment you feel secure, the moment you realize your worth, the moment you understand that you don't have to beg for love, you would leave. And they knew that. That's why they created chaos. That's why they kept you in a cycle of highs and lows, of love and rejection, of promises and betrayals. Because when you're constantly trying to fix something, when you're always in survival mode, you don't have time to stop and think, to see the truth for what it is. You don't have time to ask yourself the real question: why am I fighting so hard for someone who isn't fighting for me? But now you see it. Now you understand. And now the only question that matters is, what are you going to do with that knowledge? Are you going to keep letting people have access to you who only bring you pain? Are you going to keep giving your energy to people who drain you? Or are you going to choose peace? Are you going to protect your space like your life depends on it? Because let me tell you, it does. Your peace is everything. Your peace is where your power lives. Your peace is where your clarity comes from. And when you allow toxic people into your life, when you allow their chaos, their drama, their dysfunction to take up space in your mind, you are giving them power they do not deserve. You are letting them distract you from your purpose, from your growth, from the life you are meant to live. And for what? For a love that isn't real, for friendships that aren't mutual, for connections that only bring you stress and heartache. No, that stops today. Today you take back control. Today you decide that your peace is non-negotiable, that your energy is too valuable to waste on people who do not respect it, that your mind, your heart, your soul deserve to be in environments that nourish them, not destroy them. And that means you have to start saying no. No to the phone calls that leave you drained. No to the relationships that keep you questioning your worth. No to the friendships that only exist when you're the one doing all the giving. No to anything and anyone that costs you your peace. Because if it costs you your peace, it's too expensive. And I know, it's not easy. It's not easy to walk away from people you once loved. It's not easy to let go of the hope that maybe, just maybe, they'll change. But here's the truth. They won't. Not for you, not because you love them enough, not because you wait long enough. People don't change unless they want to. And if they haven't changed by now, if they haven't chosen to do better by you, they aren't going to. And you giving them chance after chance, you allowing them to keep playing the same games, that's not helping them, and it's certainly not helping you. You are not responsible for saving people who do not want to be saved. You are not responsible for carrying relationships that only weigh you down. You are not responsible for teaching someone how to treat you when they already know but just refuse to do it. What you are responsible for is yourself, your healing, your growth, your happiness. And that means making the hard decisions. That means cutting ties where you need to. That means closing doors that should have been closed a long time ago, and not just closing them, locking them. Because once you free yourself from that kind of toxicity, you do not go back. You do not reopen doors that led you to pain. You do not answer calls from people who only bring you stress. You do not keep trying to fix something that was never meant to be yours. You move forward. You build a life that feels good, not just looks good. You surround yourself with people who pour into you the way you pour into them. You choose joy every single day, and you do not apologize for it. Because after everything you've been through, after all the times you put yourself last, after all the moments you tolerated what you shouldn't have, you deserve peace. You deserve love that feels safe. You deserve friendships that feel mutual. You deserve a life that feels like freedom. And the only way you get there is by protecting your peace with everything you have. Because the truth is, the right people, the people who truly love and respect you, will never require you to sacrifice your peace just to keep them in your life. Listen to me. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are not the person they tried to convince you that you were. You are not lost. You are not damaged. You are not a failure. What you are is powerful beyond measure. What you are is resilient. What you are is someone who walked through fire and came out the other side, not burned, but transformed. Because that's the thing about fire. It destroys, yes, but it also purifies. It reveals what's real. It burns away what doesn't belong. And that's exactly what happened to you. You were thrown into a situation that tried to break you. You were pushed, tested, stretched beyond limits you didn't even know you had. You were betrayed, manipulated, underestimated. You were made to believe that you were less than, that you weren't enough, that you were somehow at fault for someone else's toxic behavior. But let me tell you something. You were never the problem. You were the lesson. See, when someone like you, someone strong, someone loving, someone genuine walks into the life of a person who thrives on manipulation, on deceit, on power games, it shakes them. It forces them to confront who they really are. It exposes everything they don't want to face. And when people aren't ready to do that kind of inner work, they don't change. They lash out. They blame. They project. They take all the chaos inside them and try to place it on you. They try to convince you that you are the one who needs to change, that you are the one who is unworthy, that you are the one who is lacking. But that was never the truth. The truth is they saw in you everything they weren't. They saw your kindness, your strength, your ability to love deeply, and instead of rising to meet you at your level, they tried to drag you down to theirs. And for a while, maybe they succeeded. Maybe they had you doubting yourself. Maybe they had you thinking that if you could just be a little quieter, a little less emotional, a little more understanding, a little more patient, then maybe they would change. Maybe they would finally love you the way you deserved. Maybe they would finally see you. And so you stayed, you fought. You gave more and more of yourself, hoping that one day it would be enough. But the truth is, nothing would have ever been enough. Not because you weren't enough, but because they never intended to see your worth in the first place. That's the hardest part to accept, isn't it? That you could have given everything, and it still wouldn't have changed a thing. That you could have been the most loving, the most loyal, the most patient person in the world, and they still would have treated you like you were disposable. But let me tell you something. That's not a reflection of you. That's a reflection of them. People who cannot appreciate love are people who do not know how to receive it. People who treat others like they are replaceable are people who are empty inside, searching for something to fill them, never realizing that what they need isn't external, it's internal. And you were never meant to be their savior. But here's the good news. Now you know. Now you see it clearly. And once you see the truth, once you recognize the pattern, you can never unsee it. That means you are free. That means you never have to go through this again. That means you can take everything you've learned, everything you've endured, and use it as fuel to step into the life you were always meant to have. Because the pain didn't break you, it built you. The loss didn't destroy you, it freed you. The rejection didn't define you, it refined you. And now it's your time. Your time to rise. Your time to step into your power. Your time to take back everything that was stolen from you. Your confidence, your joy, your belief in yourself. You don't need their validation anymore. You don't need their approval. You don't need to keep replaying the past, trying to understand why they did what they did. Their choices are theirs to carry. Their consequences are theirs to face. You are moving forward. And the beauty of moving forward is that you get to choose who you take with you. You get to decide what kind of energy you allow into your life. You get to set boundaries that protect your peace, that honor your worth, that ensure you never settle for less than you deserve again. Because now you understand something powerful. You are the prize. You are the blessing. You are not someone who needs to chase love, to beg for attention, to fight for a place in someone's life. The right people, the ones who see your value, the ones who are worthy of your presence, will never put you in a position where you have to question your worth. So let this be the moment you reclaim yourself. Let this be the moment you stop carrying the weight of other people's issues. Let this be the moment you stand tall, knowing that everything you went through was preparing you for something greater. Because you didn't just survive, you transformed. You became wiser, stronger, more unshakable. And that is something no one can ever take from you again. So go, live boldly, love fearlessly, trust yourself, walk with confidence. Because you, my friend, are unstoppable.